opened a box recently and found a book I hadn't seen since I was a child, called Enchanting Animal Stories, a delightful menagerie of wildlife stories. It's a collection of a number of short stories and extracts from various books and various authors, and I want to read one of them for you today. Bambi and the Old Stag by Felix Salten. Bambi, the young fawn, had to learn that growing up was not always easy. Bambi was often alone now, but he was not so troubled about it as he had been the first time. His mother would disappear, and no matter how much he called her, she wouldn't come back. Later she would appear unexpectedly and stay with him as before. One night he was roaming around quite forlorn again. He could not even find his cousins Gobo and Feline. The sky had become pale grey, and it began to darken so that the treetops seemed like a vault over the bushy undergrowth. There was a swishing in the bushes, a loud rustling came through the leaves, and Bambi's mother dashed out. Someone else raced close behind her. Bambi did not know whether it was Aunt Ina or his father or someone else, but he recognised his mother at once. Though she rushed past him so quickly, he had recognised her voice. She screamed, and it seemed to Bambi as if it were in play, though he thought it sounded a little frightened too. One day, Bambi wandered for hours through the thicket. At last he began to call. He simply couldn't bear to be so utterly lonely any more. He felt that pretty soon he'd be perfectly miserable, so he began to call for his mother. Suddenly, one of the fathers was standing in front of him, looking sternly down at him. Bambi hadn't heard him coming and was terrified. This stag looked more powerful than the others, taller and prouder. His coat shone with a deeper, richer red, but his face shimmered silvery grey, and tall black beaded antlers rose high above his nervous ears. "What are you crying about?" the old stag asked severely. Bambi trembled in awe and did not dare answer. "Your mother has no time for you now," the old stag went on. Bambi was completely dominated by his masterful voice, and at the same time he admired it. "Can't you stay by yourself? Shame on you." Bambi wanted to say that he was perfectly able to stay by himself, but he had often been left alone already, but he could not get it out. He was obedient and felt terribly ashamed. The stag turned around and was gone. Bambi didn't know where or how, or whether the stag had gone slow or fast. He'd simply gone as suddenly as he had come. Bambi strained his ears to listen, but he could not catch the sound of a departing footstep or a leaf stirring, so he thought the old stag must be somewhere close by, and snuffed the air in all directions. It brought him no scent. Bambi sighed with relief to think he was alone, but he felt a lively desire to see the old stag again and win his approval. When his mother came back, he did not tell her anything of his encounter. He did not call her any more either the next time she disappeared. He thought of the old stag while he was wandering around. He wanted very much to meet him. He wanted to say to him, "See, I don't call my mother any more," so the old stag would praise him. But he told Gobo and Feline the next time they were together on the meadow. They listened attentively and had nothing to relate that could compare with this. "Weren't you frightened?" asked Gobo excitedly. "Oh, well," Bambi confessed, he had been frightened, but only a little. "I should have been terribly frightened," Gobo declared. Bambi replied no, he hadn't been very much afraid because the stag was so handsome. "That wouldn't have helped me much," Gobo added. "I'd have been too afraid to look at him. When I'm frightened, I have streaks before my eyes so that I can't see at all, and my heart beats so fast that I can't breathe." Feline became very thoughtful after Bambi's story and did not say anything. But the next time they met, Gobo and Feline bounded up in great haste. They were alone again, and so was Bambi. "We've been hunting for you all this time," cried Gobo. "Yes," Feline said importantly, "because now we know who it was you saw." Bambi bounded into the air for curiosity and asked who. Feline said solemnly, "It was the old prince." "Who told you that?" Bambi demanded. "Mother," Feline replied. Bambi was amazed. "Did you tell her the whole story?" They both nodded. "But it was a secret," Bambi cried angrily. Gobo tried to shield himself at once. "I didn't do it, it was Feline," he said, but Feline cried excitedly. "What do you mean a secret? I wanted to know who it was. Now we all know, and it's much more exciting." Bambi was burning up with desire to hear all about it and let himself be mollified. Feline told him everything. "The old prince is the biggest stag in the whole forest. There isn't anybody else that compares with him. Nobody knows how old he is. Nobody can find out where he lives. No one knows his family. Very few have seen him, even once. At times he was thought to be dead because he hadn't been seen for so long. Then someone would see him again for a second, and so they knew he was still alive. Nobody had ever dared to ask him where he had been. He speaks to nobody, and no one dare speaks to him. He uses trails none of the others ever use. He knows the very depths of the forest, and he does not know such a thing as danger. Other princes fight for one another at times, sometimes in fun or to try each other out, sometimes in earnest. For many years no one has fought with the old stag, and of those who fought with him long ago, not one is living. He is the great prince. Bambi forgave Gobo and Feline for babbling his secret to their mother. He was even glad to have found out all these important things, but he was glad that Gobo and Feline did not know all about it. They did not know that the great prince had said, "Can't you stay by yourself? Shame on you." Now Bambi was very glad he had not told him about those things, for then Gobo and Feline would have told that along with the rest, and the whole forest would have gossiped about it. That night when the moon rose, Bambi's mother came back again. He suddenly saw her standing under the great oak at the edge of the meadow, looking around for him. He saw her right away and ran to her. That night Bambi learned something new. His mother was tired and hungry. They did not walk as far as usual. His mother quietened her hunger in the meadow where Bambi too was used to eating most of his meals. Side by side they nibbled at the bushes and pleasantly ruminating, went further and further into the woods. Presently there was a loud rustling in the bushes. Before Bambi could guess what it was, his mother began to cry aloud as she did when she was very terrified or when she was beside herself. "Ow!" she cried, and giving a bound stopped and cried, "Ow! Ow!" Bambi tried to make out the mighty forms which were drawing near as the rustling grew louder. They were right near now. They resembled Bambi and Bambi's mother, Aunt Ina and all the rest of his family, but they were gigantic and so powerfully built that he stared up at them overcome. Suddenly Bambi began to bleat. "Ow! Ow! Ow!" He hardly knew he was bleating. He couldn't help himself. The procession trampled slowly by. 3, 4 giant apparitions, one after the other. The last of them was bigger than any of the others. He had a wild mane on his neck and his antlers were tree-like. It took Bambi's breath away to see them. He stood and bleated from a heart full of wonder. For he was more weirdly affected than ever before in his life. He was afraid, but in a peculiar way. He felt how pitifully small he was, and even his mother seemed to him to have shrunk. He felt ashamed without understanding why, and at the same time terror shook him. He bleated, "Bow, bow." He felt better when he bleated that way. The procession had gone by. There was nothing more to be seen or heard. Even his mother was silent. Only Bambi kept giving short bleats now and then. He still felt the shock. "Be still," his mother said. "They've gone now." "Oh, Mother," Bambi whispered, "who was it?" "Well," said his mother, "they are not so dangerous when all is said and done. Those are your big cousins, the elk. They are strong and they are important, far stronger than we are." "And aren't they dangerous?" Bambi asked. "Not as a rule," his mother explained. "Of course, a good many things are said to have happened. This and that is told about them. But I don't know if there's any truth in such gossip or not. They've never done any harm to me or to any one of my acquaintances." "Why should they do anything to us?" asked Bambi, "if they are cousins of ours?" He wanted to feel calm but kept trembling. "Oh, they never do anything to us," his mother answered. "But I don't know why. I'm frightened whenever I see them. I don't understand it myself, but it happens that way every time." Bambi was gradually reassured by her words, but he remained thoughtful. Right above him in the branches of an alder, the screech owl was hooting in his blood-curdling way. Bambi was distracted and forgot to act as if he had been frightened. But the screech owl flew by anyhow and asked, "Didn't I frighten you?" "Of course," Bambi replied. "You always frighten me." The screech owl chuckled softly. He was pleased. "I hope you don't hold it against me," he said. "It's just my way." He fluffed himself up so that he resembled a ball, sank his bill into his foamy white feathers, and put on a terribly wise and serious face. He was satisfied with himself. Bambi poured out his heart to him. "Do you know," he began slyly, "I've just had a much worse fright." "Indeed," said the owl, displeased. Bambi told him about his encounter with his giant relations. "Don't talk to me about relations," the owl exclaimed. "I've got relations too, but I only fly about in the daytime, so they're all down on me now. No, there isn't much use in relations. If they're bigger than you are, they're no good to you, and if they're smaller, they're worth still less. If they're bigger than you can't bear them because they're proud. And if they're smaller, they can't bear you because you're proud. Nope, I prefer to have nothing to do with the whole crowd." "But I don't even know my relations," Bambi said, laughing shyly. "I've never heard of them. I never saw them before today." "Don't bother about such people," the screech owl advised. "Believe me," he rolled his eyes significantly, "believe me, it's the best way. Relatives are never as good as friends. Look at us. We're not related in any way, but we're good friends, and that's much better." Bambi wanted to say something else, but the screech owl went on. I've had experience with such things. You are still too young, but believe me, I know better. Besides, I don't like to get mixed up in family affairs." He rolled his eyes thoughtfully and looked so impressive with his serious face that Bambi kept a discreet silence. Another night passed and morning brought an event. It was a cloudless morning, dewy and fresh. All the leaves in the trees and the bushes seemed suddenly to smell sweeter. The meadows sent up great clouds of perfume to the treetops. "Beep," said the field mice when they awoke. They said it very softly, but since it was still grey dawn, they said nothing else for a while. For a time it was perfectly still. Then the crow's hoarse rasping call sounded far above in the sky. The crows had awakened and were visiting one another in the treetops. The magpie answered at once, "Shrack, crack, crack! Did you think I was still asleep?" Then 100 small voices started in a very softly here and there. "Peep, peep, doo." Sleep and the dark were still in these sounds, and they came from far apart. Suddenly, a blackbird flew to the top of the beech. She perched way up on the topmost twig and stuck up thin against the sky and sat there watching how, far away over the trees, the night-weary pale grey heavens were glowing in the distant east and coming to life. Then she commenced to sing. Her little black body seemed only a tiny dark speck at that distance. She looked like a dead leaf, but she poured out her song in a great flood of rejoicing through the whole forest, and everything began to stir. The finches warbled, the little red throat and the goldfinch were heard. The doves rushed from place to place with a loud clapping and rustling of wings. The pheasants cackled as though their throats would burst. The noise of their wings as they flew from their roosts to the ground was soft but powerful. They kept uttering their metallic splintering call with a soft and ensuing chuckle. Far above, the falcons cried sharply and joyously, "Ya, ya, ya!" The sun rose. "Doo, doo!" the yellow bird rejoiced. It flew to and fro amongst the branches, and its round yellow body flashing in the morning light like a winged ball of gold. Bambi walked under the great oak in the meadow. It sparkled with dew. It smelled of grass and flowers and moist earth, and whispered of 1,000 living things. Friend Hare was there and seemed to be thinking over something important. A haughty pheasant strutted slowly by, nibbling at the grass seed and peering cautiously in all directions, the dark metallic blue of his neck gleaming in the sun. One of the princes was standing close to Bambi. Bambi had never seen any of the fathers so close before. The stag was standing right in front of him next to the hazel bush and was somewhat hidden by the branches. Bambi did not move. He wanted the prince to come out completely and was wondering whether he dared speak to him. He wanted to ask his mother and looked around for her. But his mother had already gone away and was standing some distance off beside Aunt Ina. At the same time, Gobo and Feline came running out of the woods. Bambi was still thinking it over without stirring. If he went up to his mother and the others now, he would have to pass by the prince. He felt as if he couldn't do it. "Oh, well," he thought, "I don't have to ask my mother first. The old prince spoke to me, and I didn't tell mother anything about it. I'll say, 'Good morning, prince.' He can't be offended at that. But if he does get angry, I'll run away fast." Bambi struggled with his resolve, which began to waver again. Presently the prince walked out from behind the hazel bush onto the meadow. "Now," thought Bambi. Then there was a crash like thunder. Bambi shrank together and didn't know what had happened. He saw the prince leap into the air under his very nose and watched him rush past him into the forest with one great bound. Bambi looked around in a daze. The thunder still vibrated. He saw how his mother and Aunt Ina, Gobo and Feline fled into the woods. He saw how Friend Hare scuttled away like mad. He saw the pheasant running with his neck outstretched. He noticed that the forest grew suddenly still. He started and sprang into the thicket. He had made only a few bounds when he saw the prince lying on the ground in front of him, motionless. Bambi stopped, horrified, not understanding what it meant. The prince lay bleeding from a great wound in his shoulder. He was dead. "Don't stop," a voice beside commanded. It was his mother, who rushed past at full gallop. "Run," she cried. "Run as fast as you can." She did not slow up, but raced ahead, and her command brought Bambi after her. He ran with all his might. "What is it, mother?" he asked. "What is it, mother?" His mother answered between gasps. "It was he." Bambi shuddered, and they ran on. At last they stopped for lack of breath. "What did you say? Tell me about what it was you said," a soft voice called down from overhead. Bambi looked up. The squirrel came chattering through the branches. "I ran the whole way with you," he cried. "It was dreadful." "Were you there?" asked the mother. "Of course I was there," the squirrel replied. "I'm still trembling on every limb." He sat erect, balancing with his splendid tail displayed his small white chest and holding his paws protestingly against his body. "I'm beside myself with excitement," he said. "I'm quite weak from fright myself," said the mother. "I don't understand it. Not one of us saw a thing." "Is that so?" the squirrel said pettishly. "I saw him long before." "So did I," another voice cried. It was the magpie. She flew past and settled on a branch. "So did I," came a croak from above. It was the jay, who was sitting on ash. A couple of crows in the treetops called harshly. "We saw him too." They all sat around talking importantly. They were unusually excited and seemed to be full of anger and fear. Whom, Bambi thought, whom did they see? "I tried my best," the squirrel was saying, pressing his forepaws protestingly against his heart. "I tried my best to warn the poor prince." "And I," the jay rasped. "How often did I scream?" But he didn't care to hear. "He didn't hear me either," the magpie croaked. "I called him at least 10 times. I wanted to fly right past him, for, thought I, he hasn't heard me yet. I'll fly to the hazel bush where he's standing. He can't help hearing me there." But at that minute it happened. "My voice was probably louder than yours, and I warmed him as well as I could," the crow said in an impudent tone. "But gentlemen of that stamp pay little attention to the likes of me." "Much too little, really," the squirrel agreed. "Well, we did what we could," said the magpie. "We're certainly not to blame when an accident happens." "Such a handsome prince," the squirrel lamented, "and in the very prime of life." "Ack!" croaked the jay. "It would have been better for him if he hadn't been so proud and had paid more attention to us." "He certainly wasn't proud. No more so than the other princes of his family," the magpie put in. "Just plain stupid," sneered the jay. "You're stupid yourself," the crow cried down from overhead. "Don't you talk about stupidity. The whole forest knows how stupid you are." "Ah!" replied the jay, stiff with astonishment. "Nobody can accuse me of being stupid. I may be forgetful, but I'm certainly not stupid." "Oh, just as you please," said the crow solemnly. "Forget what I said to you, but remember that the prince did not die because he was proud or stupid, but because no one can escape him." "Ah!" croaked the jay. "I don't like that kind of talk." He flew away. The crow went on. "He has already outwitted many of my family. He kills what he wants. Nothing can help us." "You have to be on your guard against him," the magpie broke in. "You certainly do," said the crow sadly. "Goodbye." He flew off with his family accompanying him. Bambi looked around. His mother was no longer there. "What are they talking about now?" thought Bambi. "I can't understand what they're talking about. Who is this he they talk about? That was he, too, I saw in the bushes, but he didn't kill me." Bambi thought of the prince lying in front of him with his bloody mangled shoulder. He was dead now. Bambi walked along. The forest sang again with 1,000 voices. The sun pierced the tree tops with its broad rays. There was light everywhere. The leaves began to smell. Far above the falcon's call, close at hand, a woodpecker hammered as if nothing had happened. Bambi was not happy. He felt himself threatened by something dark. He did not understand how the others could be so carefree and happy while life was so difficult and dangerous. Then the desire seized him to go deeper and deeper into the woods. They lured him into their depths. He wanted to find some hiding place where, shielded on all sides by impenetrable thickets, he could never be seen. He never wanted to go to the meadows again. Something moved very softly in the bushes. Bambi drew back violently. The old stag was standing in front of him. Bambi trembled. He wanted to run away, but he controlled himself and remained. The old stag looked at him with his great deep eyes and asked, "Were you out there before?" "Yes," Bambi said softly. His heart was pounding in his throat. "Where is your mother?" asked the stag. Bambi answered still very softly, "I don't know." The old stag kept gazing at him. "And still you're not calling for her?" he said. Bambi looked into the noble iron-grey face, looked at the stag's antlers, and suddenly felt full of courage. "I can stay by myself too," he said. The old stag considered him for a while, and then he asked gently, "Aren't you the little one that was crying for his mother not long ago?" Bambi was somewhat embarrassed, but his courage held. "Yes, I am," he confessed. The old stag looked at him in silence and seemed to Bambi as if those deep eyes gazed still more mildly. "You scolded me then, Prince," he cried excitedly, "because I was afraid of being left alone. Since then I haven't been." The stag looked at Bambi appraisingly and smiled a very slight, hardly noticeable smile. Bambi noticed it, however. "Noble Prince," he asked confidently, "what has happened? I don't understand it. Who is this he they are all talking about?" He stopped, terrified by the dark glance that bade him be silent. Another pause ensued. The old stag was gazing past Bambi into the distance. Then he said slowly, "Listen, smell, and see for yourself. Find out for yourself." He lifted his antlered head still higher. "Farewell," he said, nothing else. Then he vanished. Bambi stood transfixed and wanted to cry, but that farewell still rang in his ears and sustained him. Farewell, the old stag had said, so he couldn't have been angry. Bambi felt himself thrill with pride, felt inspired with a deep earnestness. Yes, life was difficult and full of danger, but come what might, he would learn to bear it all. He walked slowly deeper into the forest. And that's the end of that extract.